It says in the brochure that we're going to talk about Walt Disney World. And I think there's none of this footage because Walt Disney World was mostly after the advent of video. Advent of video. And so video kind of deteriorates, and we haven't found as much. But there was a ride down there, and we had an opportunity last spring to do a destination in Davie. And Steve and Mimi, who works at the archives, and Alex Williams, who works here at Disneyland, they are really dedicated young guys, and they put together a reconstruction of one of the most legendary rides that never happened, which was the Western River Expedition. So we have an 8-minute, almost real-time ride-through of that ride to share with you this afternoon. We've got a few slides here to set it up, so let's start with a view of the master Imagineer and animator, and probably the best guy at staging setup, so you could read them with your eyes. You didn't have to hear the dialogue, you didn't have to get the gags. Mark Davis literally could paint a scene that gave you everything you needed to know from his drawing. And if it animated, all the better, but it didn't need to. It's all there in the drawing. So come on out. And this wonderful rendering was one of the few postcards that was ever made. I know Gary's here. They actually sold a postcard of a ride that never happened. The Western River complex was quite ornate. It not only had the ride we're going to share with you today, but a lot of other rides on the surface of it, which I'll show you in a slide in a minute. But first, let's go on to look at another great player in this. This is an original Mary Blair. Mary and Mark, of course, worked together hand in hand on Small World, and they did likewise on this. Just look at that color. This was going to be a very stylized ride. It was on the scale of Pirates of the Caribbean, just like the pirate ride in the boat, but much more like Small World in terms of the outrageous theatricality that only Mary could bring to it. Another one of Mary's, if you go to the next slide, is stuck. Oh, there it is. This was the cavern scene, and of course there was an attraction here in the Nature's Wonderland show, Rainbow Caverns, that Mary had done a riff on. Let's imagine if this had actually happened. The next shot here is a model we found, and if you look closely at this, you can see a log flume ride, so there is the ancestor of Splash Mountain. There's also a train ride, which is the ancestor of Big Thunder Mountain. And Thunder Mesa was the complex itself, so when it was decided not to do the entire thing and build pirates instead for Florida, I took the word thunder and combined it with Big Thunder to create Big Thunder Mountain, which was part of this. There's also a maze, and the donkey, the mule ride, was on the top of that. So literally there were 5 attractions. And God only knows what that rainbow desert, the painted desert is about. I have no idea. We can't figure that one out. But I guess if you were in the Goodyear blimp, you could see that. So let's go down. Now this is an amazing key piece because I found this. Nobody knew what it was, but it is an interior model, and it allowed Stephen and Alex to, we worked together and figured out how these scenes you're going to see next actually occur in the order. And the big missing puzzle piece was the bluish and yellowish piece in the top. That was not part of the ride, and that's what kept throwing us, because you can see the train track piercing the middle of that. And that scene out there was constructed as something that the train would view, and only the train. The reddish box and the blue and reddish box were the actual ride. Once we figured that out, there's just a small linkage below the black bar that got you from the front building to the back building, and those are the elements that comprise the ride that we're going to take you on now. All right, here we go. So this has audio, but please let us talk to you so we can fill you in. But like all great Disney Mega E rides, it started in a cavern.
Yeah, the story views are very similar to Pirate Country.
It was originally thought that taking a Western to the east would be as exciting as taking an Eastern Pirates of the Caribbean to the west. So that's why Mark created this, to bring the West east. But they were also mad down there, all the guests, and there was no pirate ride. that they made them build a park ride instead in Florida. So that was kind of the demise of Western River Ride. But as you moved into this caverns, you could begin to see shapes and forms in the various stalactites and formations there that kind of preceded or anticipated what you see later in the ride. This is the first panorama shot, and from this point on now we're going to drop down again, and you're going to get pretty much by the beat ride through. Now this scene that opens it up did have an afterlife in the Land Pavilion in Epcot, so a little bit of this has found its way into various shows, which you'll probably recognize. We thought that the music you're hearing, which is in Pecosville, would be an appropriate thing, so Stephen got it in there. And then it turned out that we found that footage there, just a brief bit of footage, where they actually did lay that in. Mark laid that in, so we were right on what they were thinking for this song during this sequence of the film. Again, perfect staging. Mark Davis's hallmark. Now this is the model. It was 1.5 inches to the foot, which means if you were a character in it, you'd be 9 inches tall if you were 6 feet high. So that is the biggest scale that we've ever done. And if I remember correctly, the model back in the early 70s was hundreds of thousands of dollars, which was incredible in those days. Again, this is from the footage that we did find a tiny bit of footage, very dark, but they had scored it to the song that you're hearing, so we guessed right, Mark. Again, combining the storytelling of Mark with the stylization of Mary and those rocks in the background is quite amazing. Now we're pulling into town, and again, this scene, I think Mark got a lot of this into the world of motion from the actors in there. Now, we were at a loss for this music, and for those of you that are Epcot fans, I think you might be able to detect where we got it from.